Dan nipis. Nak potong tak? Biarlah panjang. Sunsilk Strong and Long Baharu. Dengan biotin dan aloe vera. Menyuburkan dan menguatkan dari akar ke hujung. Biarkan rambut kuat dan panjang. Sunsilk.
Ingin tahu bagaimana konsultan Unify Business boleh membantu Cindy mengurus jualannya pada pelbagai platform?
Jom Unify Business.
Betul tu! Sekarang belia boleh jimat masa dan kos. Serta semua diintegrasikan pada Unify E-Commerce Hub. Transformasikan perniagaan dengan Unify Business, rakan digital pilihan anda. Hubungi kami sekarang. Jom Unify Business.
Pasti ada sesuatu yang baru untuk anda terokai.
I just don't want anybody to get hurt.
Misteri untuk diselesaikan.
We're patriots acting in the country's best interest.
Kebenaran untuk ditegakkan.
You have to find out who did this hackathon.
Temui kisah anda
Everything is more connected than you think.
di sini.
The sick is your enemy, not us!
Promise me you'll finish them.
Stream bila-bila masa dengan Astro Baharu. WhatsApp kami sekarang.
Dia tak pernah nak kacau anak kita pun, Zee. Dia sanggup buat apa saja asalkan dendam ni terbalas.
Igawan ngeri yang menghantui diri.
You terlibat nak sebut ayah ni?
Aku betul-betul tak sengaja. Sampai bila nak biarkan isteri awak tu ganggu hidup saya?
Kejahatannya terbongkar.
Nak kau bahagia kecilnya.
Saya tak boleh hidup tanpa awak dengan ia.
Dapatkah kebahagiaan dikecapi? Saksikan Isteri Hala Isnin hingga Jumaat di Astro Ria dan Astro Go.
Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera. Saya Ibrahim Sani. Kita mulakan Minggu 29 Mei ini dengan beberapa perkara yang agak penting, bermula dengan OPR dan juga ada kemungkinan Kementerian Ekonomi memberikan beberapa cadangan mahupun juga pengumuman berkenaan dengan syarikat-syarikat pemula di Malaysia. Kita mulakan dengan unjuran minggu ini. Kerajaan belum bercadang untuk menyemak semula unjuran pertumbuhan ekonomi negara tahun ini susulan penyusutan mata wang ringgit 2 minggu kebelakangan ini. Bagaimanapun, Menteri Ekonomi Yang Berhormat Rafizi Ramli berkata kerajaan akan terus memantau perkembangan mata wang tempatan itu.
Penyusutan nilai ringgit 2 minggu ini disifatkan banyak dipengaruhi oleh hasil perbincangan mengenai had siling hutang Amerika Syarikat sekaligus mempengaruhi sentimen pasaran.
The net sum tu is we don't track the net sum per se that affects the projection. What we see is how import, export, balance of payment dan sebagainya, and we'll do that on month to month basis, dan kita akan terus memantau, tapi setakat ini tidak ada sebarang keperluan kerana we have to see, seperti yang saya sebut tadi, ini banyak berkaitan dengan debt ceiling di US, dan debt ceiling tu perlu diselesaikan dalam tempoh seminggu ni.
Rafizi berkata situasi nilai ringgit sekarang turut membawa kebaikan, contohnya kepada pendapatan negara dan juga sektor minyak, memandangkan penetapan harga adalah dalam nilai dolar Amerika Syarikat. Beliau berkata demikian ketika ditanya sama ada kerajaan akan menyemak semula unjuran keluaran dalam negara kasar KDNK susulan penyusutan mata wang tempatan. Tahun ini, kerajaan mengunjurkan pertumbuhan ekonomi pada kadar 4 hingga 5%.
Bursa Malaysia dijangka terus diniagakan berhati-hati minggu depan di tengah-tengah kebimbangan terhadap perkembangan ekonomi global. Naib Presiden Penyelidikan Equity Rakuten Trade Sdn Bhd, Tong Pat Leng berkata sentimen pasaran tempatan diunjurkan kekal berhati-hati sehingga isu had siling hutang Amerika Syarikat diselesaikan walaupun aktiviti membeli saham berharga rendah juga turut dijangka muncul. Beliau menjangkakan FTSE Bursa Malaysia KLCI ataupun FBM KLCI diniagakan dalam jajaran kecil pada minggu ini dalam jajaran 1,400 hingga 1,410 mata. Dari segi teknikal, mereka menjangkakan sokongan segera berada pada 1,400 dan pada ketahanan 1,440 mata. Bagi asas Jumaat ke Jumaat, FBM KLCI turun 25.56 mata untuk ditutup minggu lepas kepada 1,402.98 mata daripada paras 1,428.54 pada minggu sebelumnya. Sepanjang minggu yang baru berakhir ini, bursa tempatan berada dalam aliran menurun dipengaruhi terutamanya oleh faktor luaran iaitu kebimbangan terhadap kemajuan isu had ceiling hutang Amerika Syarikat dan ketegangan China Amerika Syarikat menjadi semakin buruk yang menjejaskan sentimen di seluruh rantau ini. Sementara itu, niaga hadapan minyak sawit mentah ataupun MSM di pasaran Bursa Malaysia Derivatif dijangka diniagakan lebih rendah minggu ini berikutan pengeluaran lebih tinggi dalam beberapa minggu selepas ini. Peniaga minyak sawit David Ng berkata pengeluaran MSM dijangka meningkat seiring dengan corak bermusim yang mungkin menjejaskan sentimen peserta pasaran untuk membeli komoditi itu. Katanya pengeluaran MSM biasanya meningkat mulai bulan April dan baru-baru bulan-bulan seterusnya. Oleh itu, mereka menjangkakan pasaran akan didagangkan di antara RM3,300 dan RM3,600. Bagi minggu baru berakhir, niaga hadapan MSM diniagakan kebanyakannya rendah susulan ringgit yang lemah, jangkaan pengeluaran rendah serta diunjurkan bahawa ekspor lebih kukuh yang akan meningkatkan sentimen pasaran. Adaptasi teknologi, terutamanya teknologi pembayaran digital, ternyata berjaya membantu perusahaan mikro, kecil dan sederhana ataupun PMKS mengembangkan perniagaan. Bukan hanya pemasaran secara dalam talian, adaptasi teknologi turut membantu PMKS menambah baik perkhidmatan, automasi, tugasan sekaligus meningkatkan produktiviti.
Suri Lifestyle, sebuah perusahaan sosial berasaskan fashion kitar semula di negara ini, berjaya mengorak langkah dalam meluaskan perniagaannya untuk membantu lebih ramai ibu tunggal. Pengasasnya, Sally Ahmad berkata, adaptasi teknologi serta sokongan syarikat korporat seperti PayNet telah membantu mereka yang sebelum ini hanya bertapak di Kelang memperluas inisiatif itu ke Langkawi.
Syarikat social enterprise ni dia kecil. So kami ni banyak sangat kekurangan, especially dari segi kekurangan daripada segi funding, lepas tu daripada segi connection. So apabila kita buat collaboration seperti dengan PayNet, so PayNet ni mempunyai rangkaian corporate yang besar yang di mana dia boleh membantu kita social enterprise kecil-kecil ni untuk sama-sama bangun untuk membantu komuniti dan juga negara.
Sementara itu, syarikat pembangun ekosistem fintech patuh syariah Medcash juga berjaya membantu lebih ramai PMKS wanita luar dan pinggir bandar mendapatkan pembiayaan kecil dengan lebih mudah. Pengasasnya Nur Aizah Samsul Baharin berkata, sokongan diberikan bukan hanya wang tetapi juga dalam bentuk mentor, latihan dan pelbagai lagi.
Dalam MyCash kita mengembangkan konsep kad Hasan. So dia tak ada interest. Jadi apa yang kita nak ialah kita mencari wanita yang ingin memasuki program pembinaan usahawan. Jadi kat Malaysia ni dah banyak dah program usahawan kan. Cuma yang kita betul-betul pentingkan ialah bila kita masuk satu program tu, kalau kita tak bergerak, tak ada apa-apa yang boleh tukar, maknanya kita tak ada apa-apalah, kita setakat masuk kelas, habis kelas. Jadi kita cari orang yang betul-betul nak membina bisnes dia dan kita dah ada 3 tahun pengalaman macam mana nak bantu.
Mereka ditemui Astro AWANI pada hari ketiga Minggu Pembayaran Digital PayNet PDPW, anjuran penyedia infrastruktur pembayaran digital runcit Malaysia, Payments Network Malaysia Sdn Bhd atau PayNet. Hari ketiga menyaksikan 4 syarikat pemula ataupun startup fintech iaitu Chip dan Biz Fintech yang memenangi PayNet Fintech Accelerator 2022 dan PayWatch serta Sweepay bakal berkolaborasi dengan PayNet di mana teknologi digunakan untuk menyelesaikan masalah dihadapi PMKS. Pimpinan kanan dari MAVCAP, Malaysian Business Angel Network dan Malaysia Venture Capital Association dan Scale Up berbincang berkenaan dengan peluang pendanaan sedia ada untuk setiap peringkat pertumbuhan syarikat pemula di negara ini. Apa yang dikenal pasti ialah perlunya perbincangan lebih mendalam dan menyeluruh di kalangan pemegang taruh di negara ini bagi mewujudkan satu ekosistem syarikat pemula yang sihat dan pesat membangun.
We are going to get different answers from each one of them, but it's the same question.
Bank Negara Malaysia or BNM wrote a letter to editors on 28th of May with the title Monetary Policy is Preemptive, Not Premature. Monetary policy decisions affect many facets of a nation's economy, and as such it is often the case that such decisions are closely watched and debated not just by financial markets but also by the general public. The conversations around the BNM Monetary Policies Committee's or MPC's decision to raise the OPR by 25 basis points on the 3rd of May exemplify this fact. Deciding on the OPR isn't something that BNM takes lightly. There are many factors that the MPC considers, the letters to editors argues. Their analysis is based on a broad range of forward-looking data and engagement with various industries and consumers. In addition, the monetary policy statement itself, they say that they have put out other explainers, for example, a simplified snapshot of their monetary policy statement, FAQs and many more on Bank Negara's website and social media. In the letter to editors, they hope that they could provide further context and colour to the MPC's actions and clarify some points that have been made to the public in the public discourse that they have been observing. Bank Negara's mandate is to maintain price stability and is to provide a conducive and sustainable growth of the Malaysian economy. In doing so, Bank Negara pursues a monetary policy that serves the interest of the country, and with that objective in mind, this also means not just considering the immediate impact of their action but also taking a long-term view of Malaysia's policy measures, including OPR decisions. This and more will be discussed with me and my guest right now who joins us from Germany, Dr. Muhammad Zabri, the Senior Lecturer of the Department of Finance, Faculty of Business and Economics at University Malaya. Doctor, let's talk a little bit more about the understanding or the need for us to understand the independent role of the MPC in the OPR setting policy and which part can help us better recognize the profound significance of separating monetary policy decision from that of political pressures or short-term considerations or even influence from the executive branch.
All right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How are you doing, Ibrahim? The independency of the MPC is very important simply because the monetary policy is driven by professionals, especially those who helm Bank Negara Malaysia. If you look at the constitutions of the committee itself, most of the members are comprises of those from Bank Negara itself, right? And then they are making the decisions, the projections of the economic situations in which will result in the increase or decrease of the OPR themselves, all right? And so there are 8 members in this committee, so 6 of which are the governor herself, the deputy governors, and another 3 assistant governors, and the 2 is being appointed by the Ministry of Finance themselves, which are professional and has no affiliations with any political party, any NGOs. All right, so they are professional in their background. So therefore, by having this, data which will drive them to make data-driven decisions. And this independency has been protected because Bank Negara Malaysia works within the Bank Negara Act 2009, 1958, which has been revised in 2009. All right, so this act, one of the provisions in section 22(2) actually provided a strong and clear indication that the monetary policy of the bank, which is Bank Negara Malaysia, will be decided with no political influence or with no, the explicit word is actually no outside or external influence, which, so this will result in the decisions made by Bank Negara which are free from the political influence, which that's why we have seen time and time again, even the Prime Minister, Yang Berhormat Prime Minister has actually reiterated this fact in Dewan Negara himself, saying that the government has no, weightage or has no influence over these decisions. Right, back to you.
The MPC's role in balancing the economic growth and price stability is also quite important for us to look at through its monetary policy decisions. Maybe you can help us understand how the MPC is using its tools and powers to provide that price stability and growth.
All right. So one of the functions which are outlined in the Bank Negara Act itself is to ensure financial stability and monetary stability. All right. So at Bank Negara's disposal, they have many different tools. So one of which is the open market operation, whereby they will be buying and selling depending on the objectives of the Bank Negara themselves. So for example, right now, so when they want to pursue a tighter monetary policy, so what they will do, now they will buy bonds and sukuk from the open market in order to reduce the money supply. All right. So OPR is only one of the tools. So OPR, which we all of us are being affected, especially the normal rakyat. All right. So when the OPR is being increased, so our cost of borrowing will be increased. So therefore, people would save more. So one of the points which have been, raised by the public, which is rightly so, is when the OPR is being increased, so we have a higher cost of borrowing. But on the other hand, if we look at the from the borrower's perspective, we will have a higher rates on or a higher returns on the savings itself. So we have always, so when it comes to the policy by Bank Negara or any other government bodies or statutory institutions, so what we will have is the pros and cons. All right. So yes, the OPR will affect most of us, which especially us for the people who have, and it will affect more adverse effects on those who are have a higher level of indebtedness. But then again, when it comes to any kind of policy, we will have the pros as well, all right? So other than the open market operation, so the OPR, so Bank Negara Malaysia have these tools in order to ensure the monetary stability, which in the end will create the financial stability within the market itself.
Maybe we can also understand or explore where does the BNM sit in terms of the governmental organization or governmental structure. We're familiar with the judiciary, the executive, and of course the parliamentary. So does BNM, I guess, have a boss to report to?
Yes, Bank Negara Malaysia actually reports to the Minister of Finance. So unlike most of the institutions or executive institutions, they report directly to the ministry. But in this case, Bank Negara Malaysia reports directly to the Minister of Finance. But then again, even though they are reporting directly to the Minister of Finance, but because of the provisions within the Bank Negara Act, which specified this kind of provisions that they would define or they would realign the monetary policy, decide on the monetary policy without any influence even from the Minister of Finance himself, which is in this case the Prime Minister X or Prime Minister.
Do you think that Bank Negara can actually improve on the transparency and public understanding of the OPR and its impact on the population? I've read with interest the letter to the editor. They target 4 particular areas. OPR hike will affect economic growth, basically debunking that. Another statement that they were debunking is on there is no reason to hike after the earlier pause with inflation moderating. These kind of debunking, do you think that this actually improves on the transparency?
In terms of the transparency itself, yes. But then again, there's more to be done, especially when it comes to the increase of OPR. It's
very, very technical. But I would argue that MPC and by
extension Bank Negara themselves, what they can do is actually to give not to really, give explicit mention of the process, but, sort of a flow chart of how this decision came about. All right. So, for example, so they see that the inflation rate, the headline inflation rate is rather high. So, and the wage rate, blah 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 blah. So, therefore, they have decided that in the end they will increase the OPR. So yes, in terms of the, I've actually read the same report and then see the social media, which is a different story of altogether. But then again, the process itself, I believe, is of great urgency. I mean, in explaining how the decision came about, I think that's more important, Ibrahim.
Comparatively speaking, other central banks, at least in this region, are also raising their interest rates. I don't know whether or not they are also being a target of politicizing their interest rate hikes, whether or not this has anything to do with the political influence that these countries have. I mean, I'm talking about our neighbors. Do you see these kind of activities that is currently happening with us here in Malaysia when it comes to politicizing Bank Negara's decision on raising interest rates with that of issues surrounding some political initiatives as well here in this country? Is there a link between the two?
Not really in Malaysia, but I cannot say for sure for other countries. But for Malaysia's case, we have been dealing with this situation ever since more and more, especially after the Asian financial crisis. So we have seen people who are, trying to influence Bank Negara Malaysia, and they have been steadfast pretty much throughout the Malaysian history in providing, not to say value-free, but then again quite independent, decisions. If I would argue, if Bank Negara Malaysia is not being professional in their conduct, Governor Tan Sri Zeti.
So she has been awarded, Governor of the Year, I think, in 16 years in which she has been the governor. I think
12 or 13 times that she has been awarded the A mark by the central bank publication. So that in of itself is actually a testament to the professionalism that has been not only Hasjati but the whole infrastructure of Bank Negara themselves. But I believe that there's more to be done when it comes to the explanation, the AKPK, the other programs in explaining. I think the worry is that whenever they see things increase, so they are worried about the spillover effects. I think Bank Negara Malaysia, especially via AKPK, has a lot more to do when it comes to the roadshows, when it comes to really I'm sorry to say these words, to dumb down the technical terms, really strip it down to the bare minimum and then try to explain in the simplest ways, which I think they can definitely do, Ibrahim.
I disagree with you that items should be dumbed down. If things are complex, it should remain complex. However, the language and the choice of words could be improved. I understand what you're trying to get at, though. I'd like to ask you about what initiatives can Bank Negara take to improve financial literacy and empower individuals to make informed financial decisions. But you're right, AKPK has been doing outreach, and the question is whether or not people want to listen to them. If people don't want to listen to them, then no matter what you do, they just don't want to listen. So the question is, I guess, how I could iterate this particular question of mine is, do you think that social media then has to play a role? Do you think that influencers have to play a role? We've seen how brands try to target, other consumers by using social media actors to try to improve on brand initiatives. Do you think that Bank Negara could do the same? Like, engage folks on social media even more aggressively than before?
Yeah. I believe they can go to that direction, but it will always have a drawback. I mean, let's say if that influencer, is taking a somewhat stronger stance as compared to what Bank Negara is doing, so that will have an adverse impact on Bank Negara themselves. But I do agree with you. So it is not only a one-way street in terms of the understanding of how OPR works, how the economy works. So we, the end consumers, must be, take initiatives to learn as well, because as of today, the information is there. It's just a matter of sifting through this information to make sure that what kind of information that's actually usable for us. And in understanding this, I would say complex. Complex. So yes, I do agree with you. The choice of word, but. In some cases, I would still believe that this is important to dumb down the terms, and this is not applicable for Bank Negara as well. This is especially true for us, which is academics, which we have been touting ourselves as the one to bridge between the industry and the people. So we, in the academia, need to play our roles in explaining things, which what we are doing right now. But it comes with challenges, of course. So not to say that it is ever going to be easy, but then again, that's the way forward, I believe.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad Zaidi Mat Zabri, the Senior Lecturer of the Department of Finance, Faculty of Business and Economics at University Malaya, joining us all the way from Germany, explaining the situation right now. We'll go for one short break. When we come back, we'll continue on with Astro AWANI.
Ada 2 orang anggota polis kita mati kena bunuh. Dan semuanya itu berlaku kerana Mamat ni bekas anggota polis. Kau tahu tak beza dengan Kai dulu, partner?
I tenang. Tak ada buaya.
Sekarang aku faham. Bagi dua anak gila macam tu. Bila nak kerja gini? Pencen nanti tobat apa? Aku suruh kau orang keluar masuk siap-siap. Bukannya start pasti peluru dekat sana. Kau ni aku tanya kau, kalau kau ada anak isteri, mana tanggungjawab kau? Tanggungjawab kepada jiwa kau atau kepada kerja kau? Kai, kita dah tak ada masa, Kai. Kai! Kau dengan aku, kita lain, boh.
Eksklusif untuk pelanggan Astro. Menangi tiket dan peluang untuk bertemu para pelakon. Sertai peraduan melalui aplikasi My Astro.
Kita lagi kuat, bos. Jumpa kami di sana.
Golongan berpendapatan tinggi atau T20 tidak akan lagi menerima sebarang subsidi.
Tidak akan ada lagi tambahan ataupun subsidi daripada kerajaan.
Kemungkinan berlakunya fenomena cuaca seperti gelombang haba yang berlarutan sehingga kini.
Harga gula tidak dinaikkan dan bekalan asas itu mencukupi di pasaran.
Gula untuk rakyat itu akan kita kekalkan.
Penyelewengan dana negara bernilai lebih 2.3 bilion ringgit.
Asia tumpuan utama dunia. Dengan ekonomi yang semakin rancak, pembangunan lestari dan tenaga boleh diperbaharui, apakah pula impak kecerdasan buatan AI dalam perkembangan teknologi dan masa depan pekerjaan? Kami mendalami setiap berita dan cerita. Saksikan diskusi, dialog dan laporan khas di Agenda Awani Asia bersama koresponden khas kami setiap Sabtu 9 malam di semua platform Astro Awani.
Thanks for joining us. My name is Ibrahim Sani. We are in anticipation of some announcement that's coming in from the government, particularly from some ministries that look into economic restructuring, attracting investment, and trying to create high-paying jobs. There's a lot that is going to be expected to be announced this morning. So we'd like to revisit some of the ideas that has been long-standing in Malaysia, particularly on how to create a good environment for startup economy, digital economy, and try to boost the training and capacity building of Malaysia. Joining us is Aaron Sarma. He's the general partner at Scale Up Malaysia. He joins us from Kuala Lumpur. Aaron, let's look into how we can develop high-value strategic industries in contributing to increasing competitiveness and innovation in the country. Do you feel that it's interesting for us to start to seriously look at Malaysia as the center for growing our digital economy, for instance?
So, hey, good morning, Ibrahim. I think we're making this a habit to kind of talk about things before they launch. So I'm really excited for this conversation today.
You are the person with the crystal ball. So it's always important to speak to you first before they announce stuff.
I'll take my soothsayer reputation a bit more seriously now. Okay, so for today, I think we're talking about positioning Malaysia as like a digital leader in the overall ecosystem in the region. I'll say one thing, this is not the first time we've wanted to do this. We've said we wanted to be the regional leader for some time now, all the way back to the late 90s, but it still remains important. So it's not to say that we should not try to position ourselves that way. I've always maintained that Malaysia is actually very strategically positioned to be the regional leader simply because we've got a growing middle class, high internet penetration, great access to information and education. Our talent is very, very robust. They're very diverse in terms of skill sets. Play in the region, not to mention also we're located in a very strategic place in the region, being the center of everything that happens in Southeast Asia. So I think it's important that we kind of look at it this way and position ourselves this way. And we have a real opportunity to be and perform this role over the next couple of years and be that player that everybody looks to for support.
You know, when you type into Google, Malaysia Hub and then leave it blank, the drop down, I literally just did this. Malaysia Hub Education, Malaysia Hub Halal, Malaysia Hub Startup. Seems like we're a hub for a lot of things, and you're right. while everything starts in earnest and with good intentions, it seems very hard for us to crystallize us as being really the hub for something. As opposed to, say, for instance, and I hate to mention this again and again, Singapore, where we know that they are the hub for investment, for growth, for financial markets, for many more. And we all know that Singapore, for instance, is really the center point of money for this region. And then if you type Thailand hub automotive, Indonesia or Jakarta hub startup or Bukalapak or any of the unicorns there, do you feel that there is a sense of skepticism the moment the government says, okay, we're going to do something and we're going to call us the center of something or the hub of something? Do you feel that this time it's going to be a bit different, or that level of skepticism is still high?
I think every time somebody announces that there's going to be a new thing that's launched, there's a natural need to be skeptical because, as you rightly listed out, we've been the hub of many dozen things over the last decade or so, right? And of course, we want to know, will this new announcement or this new proclamation result in meaningful change? But I think one thing that we should focus on is that Malaysia is in desperate need of a narrative. We need to know what we stand for as a nation, especially when it comes to digital economy. So like if you look at our neighbors, and I was in a conversation with somebody just last week, we had a panel session where we were just talking about this as well. If you look at Vietnam, for example, Vietnam has clearly positioned themselves as the China outsourcing hub of Southeast Asia. If you look at Singapore, they've clearly positioned themselves as the financial hub of Southeast Asia. Indonesia says we're the largest market in Southeast Asia. Come to us, you can build a unicorn there. So what's Malaysia's story? Why do we exist as a digital economy? What is our purpose? And I think this is where the government should show leadership and can show leadership. But whatever is announced today, we need to make sure that there is a clarity of focus and execution. One thing I've always felt is a challenge in this country is that we have great proclamations and great plans. A couple of years ago, we launched some blueprints and stuff in the digital economy. But when it comes to execution, it's either under-resourced or it's spread. The resources are spread over too many agencies for us to truly make an impact. So I think we've got great ideas, we've got the right idea, but where we kind of fall is when it comes time to execute these ideas and our ability to actually make it happen.
Do you feel that changes in policy is the one that really disrupted our so-called narrative? The change of governments, for instance, over the past 5-6 years, the change of the planners and the executors. Now that we have, in a lot of ways, a more stable government, a clarity of ideas of where we should be heading forward in the next 3 to 4 years before the next general election, now is a good time for us to see who are the executors, and the days are brighter ahead of us because of the volatility on the political climate is actually quite abating right now. Do you feel that that is the case?
Yeah, I guess I'm an eternal optimist, and I think this is the best time to be an optimist. With the deck kind of reshuffled, and we have a new batch of leaders in place. To your point earlier, I do agree. I think the changes in government has had a negative impact on the ecosystem, simply because policies tend to shift and change with every new batch of leadership that comes in. And it's not just in the political class, which obviously is an issue, but also in the leadership classes of all the agencies, right? We'll see changes in CEOs or CEO positions left vacant for a prolonged period. We also will see new changes of boards, and with the new changes of boards, there'll be new directions for these agencies, and new execution policies may change as well. So having a locked-in leadership for at least the next couple of years will ensure that whatever policies are decided will actually come to pass, and we'll actually be able to see the fruition of those ideas, for good or ill, right? They may not work, but at least we'll see a consistent execution of these ideas that we're announcing hopefully in the next day or so.
Every 10 years, every decade or so, we come across a very innovative and very aggressive innovator and entrepreneur. Previous decades, we saw how Tan Sri Tony Fernandes reshaped aviation. Very recently, we've seen how, say, for instance, Karsam or Kamarul of Aerodyne has pushed ahead. When I meet them at these, open houses very recently, right, a few weeks ago, what's the secret sauce? All of them say the same thing, which is to grow their business in other markets outside Malaysia. They can be a Malaysian company, they can set up shop here in Malaysia, but the focus has always been in trying to capture audiences and consumers outside of Malaysia. Do you feel that that is the case for companies to grow and build that digital economy, where we need to have strong infrastructure domestically, but then, you know, the moolah is elsewhere? Is that the way forward?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And just talking about Tan Sri Tony, about Eric, about Kamarul, these are great entrepreneurs who have really built large businesses outside of Malaysia. And it's, I think, no fault of Malaysia as a market, but I think we also need to be very transparent and honest about the shortcomings of Malaysia as a market. We're not as big as we think we are. We always kind of lull ourselves into this, how shall we say, this sense of comfort that we're bigger than Singapore. We've got 30 million people, but really it's not a large market to build a billion-dollar company or a large innovative business. You have to go out. And so I think Malaysian entrepreneurs need to see this as something that is the only path to build those large businesses is to go out of Malaysia, build a business in Indonesia or in Thailand or in the Philippines or in Vietnam. And that's kind of how you build strong and large sustainable companies. Malaysia is a great place to call your base because, as I mentioned earlier, we've got talent, we've got infrastructure, we've got the people here who can actually build these businesses locally. But in terms of capital, in terms of expansion opportunities, it's really out there. And typically, if you look at investors and stakeholders outside Malaysia, when they look at Malaysian entrepreneurs, we are actually regarded with quite high regard. They say like Malaysian entrepreneurs are actually very resourceful, very good with P&Ls, very good with return on capital, and very, very efficient in building their businesses. And so that's why Malaysian entrepreneurs tend to thrive, especially when they get out of Malaysia into other markets.
So there is a dichotomy between Malaysian entrepreneurs versus the Malaysian market, and we have to acknowledge that, and it's important for us to be honest, as you say, about the limitations that we have as a market. Because of this...
Yeah, I mean, we're 30 million people, right, or thereabout, but that's not a sizable market, especially if you're doing consumer products like aviation, for example. It's not really 30 million people, it's probably 3 million people who can make purchase decisions to actually travel. So it's relatively small, which is kind of similar-ish than if you talk about in those ways to like Singapore. We're also a very non-homogeneous market, right? We have different cultures within the market, different languages are spoken, different sub-genres of interests are also there. So building products around this also can be complicated because you don't have that one market that speaks the same language and has the same kind of cultural benefit. So these are challenges within Malaysia, but it's also an advantage because our entrepreneurs actually know how to navigate multicultural societies, which is why Tony has been able to build a multicultural businesses, and so has Eric, and even Kamarul has done that as well.
Some of my friends have actually moved places to Jakarta, to Singapore, to Ho Chi Minh, and they argue that these cities are very conducive for foreign workers like themselves, they're Malaysians mostly, to live and work, particularly in the space of the digital economy. Do you feel that that is an area of importance should the government announce something later this week or later today, that building digital talent and using Kuala Lumpur as the regional hub for startups and the digital industry is actually quite crucial? Must, say for instance, laws towards attracting digital talent change in order for us to be as facilitative, if not at the same level of these three cities right now?
I'm glad you said it, right? I think the thing that is the most important thing we could do is attracting digital talent to Malaysia. It is, I think, agenda number one. I know we've talked about capital, we've talked about regulatory support, we've talked about government intervention, we've talked about agencies, but if there was one thing we could do, if I had a wish list of things we could do, is attract talent into Malaysia who want to build businesses there. And the example is not very far off. Look at Singapore, right? We talked about just now, right? Singapore's entrepreneurship ecosystem is made up of non-Singaporeans who are building large businesses in Singapore. That's also the story in Silicon Valley. The best startups are all founded by people who are not from the US, but they were attracted into the market to build those businesses. And so if we think this way, that we're not only trying to blossom local talent, but import talent who can then overflow into the local market and raise other local talent as a byproduct, That is a much more impactful way for us to supercharge our digital economy than just hoping and praying our local guys will be able to kind of rise to the occasion. So we need very progressive policies to bring in top entrepreneurs, the best developers, the best thinkers to come to Malaysia and set up shop here and call Malaysia home. Because by doing this, we'll be able to build that large economy we've always dreamed of and hoped for.
One area of interest that I want to be looking at, should the government announce anything today or this week, is on the exact regulatory changes or regulatory support that the government is going to introduce. Perhaps some amalgamation of the governmental agencies that currently exist. I can imagine there's a lot of overlap between one another, and I hate to point it out because many of them, my friends, are working in some of these kind of agencies. So, you know, in a way, calling these agencies out might not necessarily be conducive for us to try to see how we can build the industry together. But do you feel that these are the areas of concern that we need to be looked at when it comes to the announcement of the proclamations of the government this week or today? Do you feel that where the devil lies in the details, where is it that the changes have to be done or the changes are going to be done? Do you feel that that kind of importance must be given some thought into regulatory changes right now?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting point. And like you, I also have a lot of friends also who work in these agencies. A lot of them are great people who gave up good jobs outside to do some good and serve the nation. And so I completely empathize with their position and the fact that they want to ensure the agency is able to sustain and grow and kind of be an impactful agency in the market, right? But what we've also heard, right, is that there is a need to kind of streamline the agencies. And even in the last budget in February, there was some talk about more streamlining within the agencies. And I think that's important, right? Over the last few months, I've not really heard any movement in this regard, but I think it's important. I'll tell you why, right? Number one, as a nation, we mentioned earlier, we need to be very efficient with our execution. So if there's a policy that goes out, we cannot be spreading that policy over multiple agencies and expecting it to be successful, because then everybody takes their own piece of the pie and tries to execute it. And then obviously there's iterations and there's ideas that are gleamed on top of it. There's merging with existing programs. And then what you get is kind of a hodgepodge kind of solution that goes out there, not really achieving the initial objective of the policy. Right, that's one thing. The other thing is in terms of capital, right? We have limited capital in the government. I don't expect the government, as if I were in the Ministry of Finance today, to deploy unlimited amounts of capital into the startup or digital economy ecosystem, hoping to see results. I want to make sure that the ecosystem is efficient, right? But we are not efficient if we're deploying little bits of capital in multiple agencies and hoping to see results. Everybody is kind of fighting with one hand behind their back, hoping to make an impact. And that's a bit of a challenge. And the other thing is, what as a natural cause of the way budgets work in general, not just in the government, but also in all organizations, is that every agency will want to ensure that they're able to have enough capital to continue as a going concern. And so what happens is there's a tendency to kind of empire build and go beyond the existing scope. So if there's one thing that's important is that we need to streamline. I don't know if it's feasible or possible to merge multiple agencies in the next 12 months or so. It may be very difficult. What we certainly need is some sort of umpire or referee to say, like, look, this is what you do, this is what you don't do. And what will really help is if a lot of these digital agencies fall under one ministry or one minister to lead the charge. Because right now they're spread over multiple ministries, and that also adds to the complexity of this.
It's interesting that you point that out, because even within, let's face it, the real politic now comes in. If that is the most efficient way to do it, and if a minister puts up his hand or her hand, you know what, it's easier to amalgamate everything under me, then his own peers or her own peers are going to be up in arms, because everybody will be saying, wait a minute, what makes, who died and made you the king? You know what I mean? So that is the issue right now. So do you feel that the arbiter has to be, say for instance, the Prime Minister, who overlooks the entire thing and just dictates, you know what, this is the thing that has to be done and all of you have to live with it? Do you feel that some level of dictatorialship is needed, I suppose?
I think so. I think some sort of like overarching focus or like directive needs to be given, so that every falls into place and executes accordingly. A good example, right, is things like Cyberjaya and Putrajaya, right? It was a national project. The government stepped in and said, no, this is what we're going to do. The Prime Minister himself drove the initiative through MDC back in the day, which is now actually MDEC, interestingly enough. And now we have two cities in the middle of what used to be a palm oil plantation who are doing decently interesting things over there. So a lot of things that happen in Malaysia happen because of kind of government initiatives, and in more cases than not, the really big initiatives happen because the Prime Minister's office tends to step in and take the charge. And so I think that's really something that we need to look into. Even though I understand the sensitivities around it, I know it's not a very popular thing to say, but if we want big impact, this is what's needed.
Okay, thanks Aaron for joining us. Final comments, Aaron, in terms of, I guess, your wish list. I know you have elaborated at length, but what would be some of the, I guess, 2 or 3 things that you really want to look at on a personal basis, I suppose, in the announcement? Is capital one of them? Is talent one of them? Or, you know, is it something else?
Yeah, I think we mentioned earlier, definitely the ability to attract, retain, and train talent in the market is something that I'll be looking forward to. The willingness for us to kind of get capital in and to make it a very capital-friendly environment. The ability to nurture entrepreneurs in the digital space and digital talent, that would be something that's very important to me. And entrepreneurs as a subset of people who can build businesses with the idea that, you know, they got enough of a safety net to take risks, because that's what's really important. And having the government able to propel them, not just in Malaysia, but regionally as well. I'd like to end just by saying that I am very hopeful that we will have some good policies out, and I'm very hopeful that the next year will be positive for the country, especially in the digital economy. So I'm looking forward to see it. I'm always an optimist, and if things work out, we'll be here to cheer it on, and if things don't, then we're here to help as well.
Thank you very much, Aaron Sarma, the forever optimist friend of ours of the show. He's the general partner at Scale Up Malaysia, joining us from a hotel lobby in Kuala Lumpur. That's amazing, man, how you can multitask.
Undisclosed location today.
Undisclosed location. Oh, well, I guess you can take some cut from that particular hotel and then you can promote that particular hotel on air. Thank you very much, Aaron, for being with us this morning. We now move on to some interesting news when it comes to the market outlook for June, and of course a bit of a recap for May 2023. Some news on economy. The Malaysian inflation continued to ease to 3.3% in April 2023 after it declined to 3.4% in March this year from 3.7% in January and February in this year as well. This is due to restaurants and hotels and food and non-alcoholic beverages actually booming. This is coming in from DOSM, or Department of Statistics Malaysia. DOSM also noted that the weight for food and non-alcoholic beverages, 29.5%, is actually quite high, and transport at 14.6% is also there as well. Meanwhile, CPI has had a significant impact on the inflation rate and cost of living. In other news, Malaysia's export prices recorded a decline of 0.5% to 141.9 points in April this year, from 142.6 points in the preceding month in March. Again, data from DOSM. In its external trade indices in April 2023 report released on last Friday, 26th of May, the department said that the import unit value of index shrank 0.8% to 128.2 points from 129.2 points. Accordingly, Malaysia's terms of trade showed an increase of 0.3%. Penang, Johor and Selangor made up 70.5% of Malaysia's total exports in April this year. In a statement on Friday, DOSM said that the nation's exports stood at 105.4 billion ringgit. Again, just 3 states, Penang, Johor and Selangor, made up over 2/3, i.e. 70.5% of total exports. The nation's exports stood at 105 billion ringgit, while imports were at 92.6 billion ringgit, resulting in a total trade of 198 billion ringgit during the month. Malaysia is also mulling a notion of establishing a Johor-Singapore economic region to strengthen the state's economic potential. This statement is coming in from the Minister of Economy, Rafizi Ramli. He said that the idea has been mooted by the state government, the federal government and the government of Singapore between meetings of these 3 parties. We're going to see a little bit more on that. News on politics. The government has given Bowston Naval Shipyards, or BNS, a bailout after the company struggled for years to deliver 6 littoral combat ships, or LCS. The new deal inked between BNS parent company Bowston Holdings will see the contract price bumped from 11 million ringgit up from 9 billion previously. Putrajaya has already forked out 6 billion ringgit from the project. However, despite the increased cost, the number of LCS's vessels to be delivered has been cut down to 5 from 6, if I'm mistaken. The government also has an SPV, or Special Purpose Vehicle, that will be taking over BNS and overseeing the project. All this is coming very, very soon. PPBM, or Parti Pribumi Bersatu Malaysia Deputy President Faizal Azumu, appeared to engage in some revisionist history when commenting about the Sheraton move. Faizal Azumu said that meeting with UMNO at the hotel only took place because there was a plot by DAP to unseat then Prime Minister Tun Mahathir Mohamad. However, the argument is still being debated. A lot of other politicians are now debunking his theory. Previously, the past President Tan Sri Hadi Awang also claimed that it was him who initiated the 2020 change in government, but for different reasons. Azmin Ali has also previously claimed that it was Dr. Mahathir who inspired the plan, while the former Prime Minister denied any movement. So, yeah, a lot of conversations there. Meanwhile, our Prime Minister, Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, has called on the media to be a little bit more critical of the government while giving the opposition their right to express themselves. Freedom of speech, especially during the National Reporters' Day, or National Journalist Day. Past President Tan Sri Hadi Awang claimed that his party has been courted to join the government. UMNO President Zaid Hamidi and PKR Deputy President Rafiz Ramli have both denied this notion. Some news on corporates. Axiata Group plans to launch its digital bank by the end of this year with a capital commitment of 100 million ringgit, according to Group CEO and MD Vivek Sood. Meanwhile, Axiata expects a lower dividend of 10 cents per share for the financial year ending 31st December last year, impacted by the merger of Celcom Axiata Berhad and that of Digi.com Berhad, which was completed in November last year. Axiata Group Berhad's associate Celcom Digi Berhad is keen to participate in the second 5G wholesale network and looks forward to more discussions with the government. All this is according to the chairman of Axiata, Tan Sri Syahril Rizza Rizwan. Meanwhile, Petronas said on Saturday, on 27th of May, an anti-corruption probe into the firm's dealings involving a 400 million project had not found any wrongdoing by the company. MAG, or the Malaysia Aviation Group, has become the first aviation organization in Malaysia to sign a Sustainable Aviation Fuel, or SAF, off-take agreement with PDB, or Petronas Dagangan Berhad, as part of collaborative efforts to make the SAF production available in Malaysia at a commercial scale. Meanwhile, TNB has inked 3 MOUs with the major energy players in Vietnam and Laos to explore potential collaboration in renewable energy power generation. Some interesting updates that we need to look at for June. We have to look for the expiry of the chicken subsidy and new electricity tariff, because there are several developments happening in the near term that warrant close attention. Earlier this year, the government has expressed its intention to float chicken prices by July this year, which some research houses believe could raise the risk of price pressures ahead. Looking at feed costs such as soybean and corn, prices have tapered lower but remain high on a relative basis, which could mean that the risk of cost pass-through, or CPT, to consumers might exist. However, ahead of another Eid celebration at the end of June, some research houses find that another round of maximum price scheme measures should cushion the pressures of food components, but price increases could moderate for other components as well. Also, the government has announced a plan to revise electricity tariffs by excluding higher income households from current electricity subsidy for the second half of this year. I interviewed the Energy Minister, Nik Nazmi. It's a very long interview. It's about an hour long, where we deep dive into some topics, including the possibility of higher tariffs. Do check that out on my other show, Notepad with me, Ibrahim Sani. Those are the kind of news that we can bring to you on a very excellent Monday morning. My name is Ibrahim Sani. Have a great week ahead.
Sarawak masih lagi menunggu keputusan Kementerian Dalam Negeri untuk memberi kelonggaran kepada anak angkat di negeri itu untuk mendaftar kewarganegaraan.
Sabah secara rasmi memperoleh 25% ekuiti dalam Petronas Chemicals Fertilizer Sabah Sendirian Berhad DCF SSB.
Suntikan dana 1.89 bilion ringgit merupakan langkah intervensi Kerajaan Sarawak dalam proses pembinaan serta pemasangan 7,000 menara telekomunikasi.
Masihkah ada harapan?
Bagi abang peluang untuk menebus semua dosa abang pada dia dan anak kita.